Hello everyone and welcome to this presentation on Proposal 5.4 on Council Representation. My name is Thomas Delay and I'm Head of Legal and Governance for the Badminton World Federation. Before we jump right into the proposal, I would like to give you a brief background on this proposal. So as of today, the BWF Council has 27 members: the President, the Deputy President, the 5 Continental VPs, the Vice President for Para Badminton, 1 athlete representative, and 18 ordinary council members. You will notice that some numbers are in red. In the case of the athlete representative, it's because under Proposal 5.2, we are suggesting an additional athlete representative for the para badminton community. So this would bring this number to 2. And under this proposal, we are suggesting to increase by 2 the number of ordinary council members from 18 to 20. So in total, we would have 30 members if everything is approved. What would be our policy objectives through this proposal? In relation to gender, it would be to have at least 20% of each gender on council. So this is gender neutral. In practice, probably it means more female, but in all cases, we'd like to have at least 30% of male, 30% of female on council. The other objective is that this 30% applies to each continent. So suppose you have a continent that has 10 council members, we would like to have at least 30%. That means 3 people that are male, 3 people that are female, representing them on council. In relation to geography, we would like to have a council that truly reflects badminton community from Jakarta to Copenhagen and everywhere in between or beyond. Now let's look straight at the proposal. The proposal is quite simple. It would be to approve amendments to the Constitution to ensure geographical and gender representation on the Council. In practice, this would work through Appendix 1, which we will look at very shortly. The reasons, as mentioned, would be to have a better balanced Council, and it would be to ensure that there is proper geographical representation on based on voting strengths, on practice, and on historical factors. Let's look at Appendix 1. So Appendix 1 puts in place a mechanism for elections to ensure the respect of geographical and gender requirements. It has a few underlying principles. The first one would be that the number of ordinary council members would increase from 18 to 20. This is purely for mathematical reasons. The requirements, the geographical and gender requirements would apply to 27 out of 30 council members. Are excluded the 2 athlete representatives, para badminton and badminton, as well as the VP for para badminton. Why is that? This is because they come from smaller populations, and we do not want to impose additional requirements on positions for which we already have trouble finding candidates. There would be 30% of each gender on council, but also among continental representatives, as we saw earlier. Finally, the reference period would start from the CC elections. So you will see why it makes sense very shortly. As I mentioned, the requirements would apply to the President, Deputy President, 5 continental VPs, and the 20 ordinary council members. That's 27 individuals out of 30, provided every proposal goes through. So we thought it was very representative of council, and at the same time allowing for exceptions for our athlete representatives and for our para badminton VP. And further to discussions based on historical factors and as approved by our continental confederations, we have come up with the following numbers of seats per continent and for genders. So as you can see in this table, Asia would have 10 reserved seats, Europe would have 9, Africa and Panama would each have 3, while Oceania would have 2. This means, respecting the 30% rule, that both Asia and Europe would have to have 3 individuals from each gender on the council, while Africa, Panama, and Oceania would need to have at least 1. To give you a concrete example of how this would work, we thought it would be interesting to simulate elections. So the people who were elected in the simulations represent those who are currently on council. So no need to overthink the results of these elections. In the first step, we would be at the Continental Confederation elections, because remember that they start the whole cycle. And further to these elections, we would have 5 elected individuals. And as we can see from the current council, these individuals would be an Asian male, a European male, an African male, a Pan American male, and an Oceanian female. At this stage, we are recording their gender and where they come from. In step 2, we are at the BWF AGM, hopefully next year. The first vote that would take place would be the vote for president, and the outcome would be, in the simulation, a European male. For the deputy president election, the outcome would be having an Asian female. So at this stage, in the background, we would be counting the votes. We're still before the ordinary council elections. So far, we would have 2 Asians, one female and 1 male, 2 Europeans, both are males, 1 African male, 1 Pan American male, and 1 Oceanian female. What does this mean? This is where it gets a bit more complicated, but I'm sure you can follow. Let's look at Asia, for example. As you will remember, Asia had 10 reserved seats. So far, 2 Asians have been elected. So 10 minus 2 equals 8. Asia has 8 vacant seats left. In Asia, or from Asia, 1 female was elected and 1 male was elected. You will remember that Asia needs to have 30%, so 3 of each gender are representing it. So, because it has 1 female, 1 male elected so far, it would still need 2 more of each gender. Looking at Europe now, Europe has 9 reserved seats. 2 were elected, 2 Europeans were elected, so 9 minus 2 equals 7. It would now have 7 vacant seats. Because both already elected individuals were male, this means that Europe would need to have at least 3 females elected per council members and 1 male elected. And so on for Africa, Panama, and Oceania. We're now going forward 1 step, and as usual, members are asked to vote for 20 ordinary council members, regardless of their religion of their region, and of their gender, but also regardless of their religion. After collecting the votes, the scrutineers will count the votes, and the candidates will be put together by continent. The candidates would then be elected in an order that respects gender and geographical requirements. What does that mean? Let's take the example of Europe. So as you will remember, Europe currently has 7 vacant seats, and it needs at least 3 females and 1 male on board. So we have our list for Europe listed with the number of the votes per person. The 3 females with the most votes will be automatically elected. Why? Because Europe still needs to fulfill its requirements for females. Following step, the male with the most votes will automatically be elected. Why? Because because it still needs to fulfill its requirement for males under the gender requirements. At this stage, Europe would have 3 more seats to fill because it had 7. 3 females were elected and 1 male was elected. So 7 minus 3 minus 1 equals 3. For the remaining 3 seats allocated for Europe, we would go according to the number of votes, regardless of gender. So this is as it would be under regular elections. Now this would conclude the part about these elections, but we've also had to think about additional rules with this system. So what would happen if there wouldn't be enough candidates from a region and from a gender? For example, in the previous example, if Europe only had a total of 2 women being put forward as candidates. In that case, the seat will remain vacant and will be filled at the next elections. When we're talking about next elections, we're not talking about the elections taking place 4 years later, but probably in the following year, an election would take place only for that position. Yes. If there would be a tie between two candidates, a runner vote would be organized if it has an impact on council. So if we're talking about number 1 and number 2, both will be elected, so there's no issue. Likewise, if we're talking about numbers 72 and 73, there's no use because neither will be elected. So we're really talking about the last candidate who would make it inside the council. That is the summary for this proposal 5.4 on gender requirements, gender and geographical requirements, but I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. The next presentation will be on vetting of candidates and of officials of the BWF. Thank you.